everybody. My name's Drew,
And I'm Matt.
and welcome back to the Comics and Cinema Club. Today, we're doing a countdown towards 2024's biggest blockbuster hit, Madam Web, by talking about another hit of the 2020s, Morbius, which was okay. I can't do this. I can't. We're talking about Morbius. We know we're a few years late. This movie's nothing. This movie is a big old pile of nothing. And
It is in fact Morbin Time
oh
at
my
last
God,
for us.
yeah,
It is the first film in film history to crack a more $1 billion. I'm sorry, I can't.
yeah.
That
No,
meme
it's just
that
we
meme was
watched this.
stupid.
Yeah, we went into this movie with the mindset that we have for every movie. Maybe it won't be as bad as we think it is. And I think that like immediately off the bat, we were like, well, never mind, actually, it's that bad. And there's a bunch of factors. We're not just going to be talking about Morbius. We're going to be talking about the Sony Spider-Man universe of Marvel characters, which was the actual title for a while, or something along those lines. We're just going to be talking about that too, and how much they fumbled the ball, not just with Morbius, but with that as well. But before we get into that, we're going to talk about this dumpster fire falling off a cliff of a movie, because holy shit, is this movie bad. And then don't worry, because when Madam Web comes out next week, we're going to watch that too. Um,
Literally, literally, the main joke about this film is the fact that somebody tweeted a fake line that wasn't in the film, but nobody was actually going to see the movie to confirm it wasn't in the film. So everybody just ran with it actually being in the movie, which is honestly the funniest thing about this. On top
yeah.
of one of the actors, which we'll get into in just a second here.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, this film was really, really bad, folks. Like I knew it was going to be something once the trailers dropped, but I honest to God didn't think it was going to be this bad but honest to God, it is not what the trailers described. There is very few things that the people actually gravitated towards in the trailers, and none of those things are in this film, you know? So
There are so many things to talk about this movie that were not great. The CGI, it just looks like it just they were like, we need to show him turning into bats. We need to show them flying around. So they made it look like little fart whiffs. Like it literally looked like trails of smoke, but really badly CGI trails of smoke. And his powers were so weird and random. And then at the end, he controlled bats to punch the villain. Like,
it looked like kind of like I think a Dark Souls boss at one point, or
yeah,
uh, whoever, or a God of War boss, whoever controlled the bees.
yeah. I think that was Dark Souls.
Or
I
was
don't
that?
know. I
I'm
don't know
not a
though.
video.
That
I'm
might
not a
not have been
gamer.
God of
Yes,
War. Depends on the God of War.
I
But
am not
yeah,
a gamer. Sue me. But
yeah.
literally,
I
I think a lot of this was based on that one scene from Venom where he fought a bunch of soldiers in a big gas cloud. Because I'm assuming that whole thing might have been easy for them to render, or like at the very least pass off some CGI. But at the end of the day, it looks like a Dark Souls fight. It looks
yeah,
like a bunch of stuff from a video game. It's like, come on, people. You had
yeah.
years to work on this. Like, give me something cool. Come on.
It also just like didn't make sense how his powers were, because literally Morbius, all he does is he drinks blood, and he's a vampire. He's a living vampire. You don't need more than that. And they're like, he can, he has echolocation with his ears, and he can do all this, and he can fly for some reason. It's like, I mean, technically he can fly, but like,
Yeah,
you don't need to. Like, it just was so random and so weird. And also the plot itself, there was no stakes, there were no tension. Like, I feel so bad because Jared Harris was dragged into this dumpster fire of a film to be a character who had like three scenes and died for motivation for Jared Leto's character, because they were like, he was a father figure to him. We need the motivation, even though we barely got any scenes with him. So, or the fact
it's.
that like his brother turned evil for random reasons because he was sick and not taken care of well. So,
I guess they learned nothing from Amazing Spider-Man 2 on villain motivations.
nope. Hey, that's another one we need to talk about too.
We'll get
Add
into
that
that
to
one
the
day.
list. Add that to the list.
Out on the pile, I guess.
Yeah, I have a big pile, but yeah, just nothing in the movie to me really stood out or was that great. Like
And,
nothing like wowed me.
and that's part of the problem that I think is inherent with this idea. Morbius, as cool as a character is, he may or may not be in the comics. I don't know. I don't read a lot of stories with him in it. He is not interesting enough of a character to give a full movie in this way. Not to be the main star. He could be a cool villain. I would love to see him fight Blade in one potential movie because, that's what he does. And he started off as a villain before he became more anti-heroic. I would love to see him actually be, like a villain, but the only experience that the modern audience is going to remember him for, like his biggest role, was in the '90s Spider-Man show, where he was just this kind of European jerk rival for Felicia Hardy for Peter Parker. It was like for Felicia Hardy's affection, since that was a whole thing. Uh, yeah, he wasn't even good in that. Like his most memorable thing was that they couldn't have him drink blood, so they give or especially now with his teeth. So they gave him these little suckers on his hands to drain people's plasma, as if that's any better. Like
It's
it's
terrifying.
yeah, it is terrifying, but nonetheless, it's like it's also '90s lame. But
Yeah.
again, that's probably what most people will know him for, and that's not what's represented here. And it's both positive and negative because again, Morbius isn't that interesting. Again, like
No.
I don't dislike him as much as I do characters like Namor or Star Fox or whatever. But I cannot think of a good reason to give him his own movie. That's just what I'm saying.
He's just not very interesting. That's the thing. Is that like, well, let me put it like this. He is interesting in the same way that a lot of Spider-Man villains like Doc Ock and Sandman and all those guys are interesting because they're basically very tragic. And he does have a tragic story. And it is interesting he tried to cure himself and then he became the monster, the living vampire. But like, I mean, I get the point for giving him his own comic because they did a good job of developing him, but he doesn't need an origin story movie. And building off of what Matt said too, in the 1998 Blade, they originally had a deleted scene where Morbius showed up. It was like the end of the movie. Blade's on a rooftop, and he looks off in the distance, and he sees Morbius. That would have been sick for a sequel. It would have been
It would
cool
have
to
been.
see. Yeah, it would have been cool to see him like go up against the living vampire or have to work with him or something like that. And go up against other villains. But just having him be a hero is it doesn't work. It's weird. It's goofy. It doesn't make sense. And I think part of the reason why they did it is because Jared Leto was attached. They had the star power, so they decided to make him the starring lead role. And the other thing about the movie too is that none of the characters are really that interesting. Nobody really stood out in any way except for Matt Smith, who was just like, "This movie is shit. I'm just gonna have a blast." He was literally the most entertaining character in that movie.
He's Doctor Who. He's going to have fun with this role no matter what.
Yeah. He just randomly started dancing, and that was like the best thing in the movie.
If there's any character I would actually expect to say something like it's Morbin Time or along those effects, it would actually be him, not Morbius himself. He's just again, Jared Leto Morbius. He's boring as hell. Like here's the thing. You know what I would have loved? I would have loved if Sam Raimi ever did him for Spider-Man 5 in his Tobey Maguire series. Like I know Spider-Man 4 was about to be Lizard and a Vulture and Black Cat maybe, but if he ever did 5 or 6, I would love for Morbius to be one of those villains. Because I feel like with Sam Raimi's style, something like a tortured vampire person could be really interesting. Would have been really fun. As a villain, not as his own protagonist, his own origin story. Again, it was just my mic.
And
Again,
yeah, go ahead.
but yes, again, Matt Smith, again, the only person who's having fun because he doesn't care. No, his career is going to be fine. Nothing is going. He's not going to suffer from this. He just wants to do a little dance, probably just annoy everybody on set and just have some fun. And he's not really going to just suffer any major loss with this. I can't really say the same for a lot of the other actors. What's Jared Leto been up to recently? Like, I don't know.
Let me look up what he's done recently. Hold on.
I genuinely can't tell you because he did the Snyder Cut for Joker, and that's about it. And it's like, okay, good for you.
Yeah, I'm looking through right now, but yeah, I mean that's basically summing it up. is just that like, oh, he was in House of Gucci and he was terrible in that apparently.
Well, that wasn't the best movie either.
No.
That was a very
Oh,
strange.
he was in Haunted Mansion. Forgot
Oh,
about that. He
oh
was the
yeah.
Hatbox Ghost in the Haunted Mansion remake. That's kind of it.
Okay, I guess.
Yeah,
Uh,
he was in a miniseries for Apple about WeWork.
okay, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Again,
Like I
not
was
much. You're not wrong. Yeah.
like I was saying, he's a very strange man. Like I remember when this film was being marketed, it was before the pandemic hit. So at a certain point, he leaked out his own phone number and said to his fans, "Hey, I'm bored. Chat with me. Ask me anything." And it was like, "Call, give me a call." So I can't imagine that went well for him. But he doesn't have the best ideas. Like during his production of Suicide Squad, it was infamous that in an attempt to be more like the Joker, he mailed his co-stars weird things. He acted very strange. He, he came across as very unpleasant. And again, he's just as good or bad a guy as he may be. It's a very strange man. I'll just say that. I'm not going to judge his character entirely, but I will say he's a very strange person. And it was honestly kind of fitting for Morbius, but at the same time, I don't know. Maybe I would have given this to someone who's a bit able to take it a bit more seriously. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely odd. It doesn't really make sense as to why they did it the way they did and why they went about that. Building off what you said about Spider-Man, he would definitely work as like a Sam Raimi villain because all of Sam Raimi's villains were just beautifully crafted and well done. They were either insane like Green Goblin or they were tragic like Sandman and Doc Ock. And Morbius could have easily fit that category of being tragic, and that would have been great to see. But again, yeah, as a hero, he doesn't work. And if you read the comics, yeah, he has his heroic moments, but typically he's just a guy who's running around and like, I'm gonna drink people to survive. Stop me, Spider-Man. And that's kind of it. The other thing too is, I think that says most of what we wanted to say about Morbius in general. This is
It's
not going
because
to be
again,
yeah.
this
This
is
is
nothing to say. You know,
this
it's
isn't going to
like
be a long app. It really was not that exciting of a movie. There wasn't really much to talk about in it. They had weird like flashbacks to Greece. They had weird filmmaking and editing. They stole part of the Dark Knight soundtrack for a scene. So I think Matt had something I wanted to add, or
yes. I just had a text message. That's sorry. Anyway, I was saying there is one thing that I would love to talk about, and that's the post-credit scenes with
oh
guess
god, I
who?
forgot about that.
Guess who? Michael Keaton's the Vulture. So
I
let
don't
me
know how
give
I
you.
got here. I think it had something to do with Spider-Man.
So let me break it down for anyone who hasn't seen the movie. Though two of you apparently, since it cracked a more $1 billion. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Somehow, during the events of No Way Home, which would later be explained in Across the Spider-Verse, uh, Michael Keaton's the Vulture, not confirmed yet to be the one from the MCU specifically, could just be any Vulture out there in the multiverse who just happens to be Michael Keaton as well, was pulled from his reality and shuffled into Morbius's on accident, even though the advertising for this film built him up as actually being a native of this universe and said, and had him be like, "What's up, Doc? Tired of the good guy thing?" And it's like that line's not in this film. That's none of those scenes that are in the trailer are in this film, and that's one thing. But for another, they bring him in from another universe, shuffled him in there, and then just said released him from prison since nobody really knows what to do with him. He builds a new vulture suit, finds Morbius in the middle of a desert, and utilizing very poor ADR, just says, "Hey, don't know how I got here. It has to do with Spider-Man or something. And I'm still figuring this place out, but I figure a bunch of guys like us should team up and do some good." And Morbius, obviously using scenes and lines that are meant for a completely different moment, uh, is all like, "Intriguing. Tell me more. I'm listening." And it's like, who talks like that when the Green Goblin's parrot shows up to you like that? Like as nostalgia critics said, it's like
Like
I
that.
genuinely cannot comprehend what they were trying to do with this beyond trying to set up the Sinister Six, which isn't going to happen anymore. But that's like the most people can talk about. It's just how bad this is, and as bad as those are, the rest of the movie isn't like that. It's mostly boring. It's a boring tortured monster movie, which again, it's like there are better ones out there. But the rest of the film, admittedly, isn't like that. It isn't that poorly edited and cut together. But my God, that's bad. That's what Madam Web would eventually spawn out of. I might just say, the poor editing and ADR and everything involving that. That's just wow.
Yeah. Here's the thing too about Morbius, and part of it is that if you ever saw the original trailer teased Spider-Man tie-ins, it teased Green Goblin, it teased a whole other universe. And then I don't know what they did. They went in, they cut it up, and they made it into something completely different. They just
And it's like airing the scene where Morbius escapes from prison. You see a picture of Toby's Spider-Man, and it's like, okay, is this Toby's universe? And then you see Michael Keaton in the trailer, and it's like, oh, is this the MCU? And I don't even think the actors were aware because Gibson was all like, oh, yeah, this is an MCU. The Avengers are a very real thing here. And it's like, no, they're not, for one thing. And for another, I don't even think, is this Venom's world? Is this, yes, they mentioned Venom. So this is very much
they made
Venom's
a mention,
world.
but they weren't sure. They made a mention, but they didn't like dive into it. It's like that thing in San Francisco, and then they never talked about it again.
And then Morbius was like, I am Venom. It's like, no, I'm Dr. Michael Morbius here to help you. And it's like, come on.
Yeah. I will say, too, this movie was nominated for Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst Screenplay, and one for Worst Actor and Worst Supporting Actress.
Who was the supporting actress again? I forgot her name.
I'm pulling her up. Because she went on to star in Andor. She was the lead actress in
yes.
Andor, and she was amazing in that. I'm going to butcher this. Adria Torres.
Adriana Torres?
Adria Torres.
Adria Torres. Okay.
Adria. Adria, yeah. But she was in Andor, right? Yeah, she was in Andor. She was Bix in Andor. She was great in that.
Nice.
Oh, she was in True Detective too. Oh my God, what the fuck? She's been in a lot of stuff that I've seen. But Andor, she was fantastic in Andor. So it's just funny to me that happened.
It's funny how like the only person whose career actually suffered from this was Leto's, because he was in like a couple things since then, but like he's not a big person. He's not a big person people want to see in superhero films again.
No, he's really not. And the other thing too, it's not just on Morbius, it's on Sony. And Sony has just been dropping the ball so much. Part of that too. So this movie was a massive box office failure. I'm pulling up the numbers real quick.
It bombed twice, actually. They re-released it because of the meme, and then they made it bomb twice. It's one of the few films in history to actually do that. It's like, that's a miracle.
Mm-hmm. Because they were like, oh guys, everybody likes this. Let's release it again. So it grossed 73.9 million in the US, 93.6 million worldwide. Oh, for a grand total of 167.5 million. And then they re-released it in June to 1,000 theaters. It bombed for, like Matt said, a second time, making only $85,000 on the day it was released. After
That's,
a dismal...
that's like a generalized average, but if that was the actual number, that would mean it made $85 at every single theater. Yeah. That would be a statistical anomaly.
Yeah, and people only saw it because they were like, it's a meme at this point. And then it made $300,000 on that weekend, and then they pulled it. And it basically was like $289 per theater average. That's what they said, basically. And I will say this, it was the 14th highest grossing domestically for a short-term release period.
Given that it came out during the perfect time for that, that's not exactly a huge win for it. And for comparison speaking, recently Sony released the Sam Raimi movies in theaters just to recoup for losses from Madam Web. And those all grossed millions and millions and millions of dollars in their just a few days. So people genuinely wouldn't mind a re-release. But nonetheless, it's like, this is very much a dead meme. This was a dead meme that convinced them to re-release it. You know?
Here's the difference between the memes of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man and the memes for this movie. The memes for this movie are literally making fun of the movie because of how not good it is. Morbin Time literally is not in the movie, and it's funnier than what we got. I'm something of a scientist myself. And Pizza Time and so many other fantastic memes from that movie are great because the movie was 2000s and it was cheesy. And it worked because of that. I will full heartedly say the Sam Raimi films, Spider Man 1 is the quintessential superhero origin that should have just been that. But then Sony latched onto that and kept doing it. And the problem that I have is that Sony keeps wanting to make Spider Man work without Spider Man. And there is a really simple solution to how you do that. You make a world where Spider Man existed, but now he's dead. And you have this world, the villains of this world react to his death. Venom goes off and becomes an antihero. Morbius goes off and becomes an antihero. Maybe Craven has to find something else to hunt. And I'm not. Maybe Madam Web has to step up because he's gone and find a new Spider-Man totem. There was so much more potential, and they didn't even drop the ball. They didn't show up to the ball game.
They really didn't. That's the problem with this. It's like it's not even like there aren't stories with this kind of precedent. You know, there are Spider-Man stories where he's gone and other people have to step up, and we see the impact it has on villains. And it's not even like people can't handle there being two Spider-Men at the same time. Like, I know people love the MCU trilogy so much. I do too. But I would love like a separate one, like for the Sony films, just to give these characters something to fight. Like, I don't even think like Venom appeared in his post credit scene. It was transported to the MCU for the end credits of No Way Home. And once he sees Spider-Man, he just looks at him and he's like, that guy. He just looks
And
at
that
screen.
went nowhere.
Yeah, and that went nowhere. Like, I guess they gave like a little bit of Venom left, but that's like, okay. The fact is, that means only so much, you know? Because the fact that he recognizes Spider-Man is one thing, but he didn't have the personal connection that the one of the comics did, you know? Like, the reason Venom was so well enduring was because of how intense his rivalry with Spider-Man and Peter Parker was. They worked well against each other, and without that, you're missing a huge element of the character's history, and so they had little to work with. And that's like a part of the problem. Again, a Sony villain universe without Spider-Man is inherently flawed. It's an inherently flawed idea, and I don't expect it to last for much longer after Craven, because they announced two other films after Madam Web and Craven. There was El Muerto, which is dead, and then Hypno Hustler, starring Troy from Community, starring Childish Gambino. It's like, no, neither of those films are probably going to happen at this point. So it's like, are you just comfortable with the sinking ship, Sony? Because that's what you've got right now. You're in Sea of Thieves, and you got a sinking ship, and everybody is just making off with your loot. The only good thing you have is MCU Spidey, so you better appreciate that, okay?
I like to see if these reference you threw in there. I love that game. But yeah, I get what they're trying to do. They don't have access to Spider-Man. They want to see if a universe without Spider-Man can work, but there are so many better ways to go about it. And the biggest problem that I have, like I just said, is that you're trying to do a universe where Spider-Man doesn't exist when you could do one where he does exist. But the other problem I have too is you're taking characters like Venom and like Morbius, and you're saying they're good guys now, guys, without any lead in or build up. Venom is such a good character because of how three-dimensional he is, not because he's just running around and making jokes with his symbiote. That's part of why he's such a good character. Yeah, he can be funny, he can be goofy, he can be weird. But at the end of the day, he started as a villain and then he became an anti-hero. And the same can be said for Morbius. He started as a villain and then he became an anti-hero. And we partly did this because of our Spider-Man talk in the comics corner. I have no idea if Craven's going to be good. It might be the one few good movies. Here's my thing. I love Craven. Craven, I mentioned in that podcast, in that episode, is one of my favorite Marvel villains. They made Craven into Animal Man.
Mm.
And his whole deal is, I want to protect the wildlife. It's like,
Like, look, here's the thing. When Spectacular Spider-Man did their episode on Craven and they introduced him, they gave him one beginning scene before the intro that showcased what he's about. He's a hunter. He's really good at his job. He cares about wildlife in a certain way. That's all you need. Again, this character, as good as he is, doesn't justify his own solo movie without Spider-Man, his arch rival, his reason for existing. It feels like, again, you are missing a key element in it, so you're trying to fill in that hole with a whole bunch of stuff that just doesn't work, like a mutated rhino or whatever else is going to be in that movie. It's like magic lion bite or whatever. I don't care. Nobody's going to see that either, honest to God. So again, and
Want to know why they call me the Rhino?
it's like not even. At least that would have been funny. Like, come on. But they literally are like turning him into some sort of Hulk-like monster. But again, as good as these characters are, as amazing as these characters are, long-lasting as they are, without Spidey, you're missing a huge element. And this is not why this universe isn't going to be long-lasting. And they're even when they try to fill that in with their attempts at Spider-Women with Araña Corazon and Jessica, whoever else it was, Jessica Drew and Madam Web. I don't fucking know.
No, it wasn't. Hold on, I'm gonna look it up. I'm on Kraven the Hunter. They have a lot of Spider-Man characters in Kraven the Hunter. Actually, they have Kraven obviously, but then they have Calypso, they have Chameleon, they have Rhino, they have Foreigner. They have a lot of different characters showing up.
But again, you're missing Spidey.
I don't know if it's gonna work. We'll see.
So anyway, like I'm saying, even when they attempt to fill that hole with Spider Women, like Cassandra Webb, like Araña Corazon, or any of the others that you attempted to use, Julia Carpenter,
Maddie Franklin,
and Maddie Franklin.
That's who it was. It was Maddie Franklin.
And all of them, it just didn't work. Like it was because these characters are so uninteresting and so unfleshed out, and we haven't even seen the movie yet, and yet we still know this. So,
and we're gonna be watching it at some point.
We will. We promise we will.
Not because we want to, but because it's gonna be free on Netflix. So.
Yes, I had the chance to buy the DVD today at Target, but I chose not to. Instead, bought Oppenheimer. So.
That's a much better purchase.
Yes. Again, it just feels like everything going into this universe is just a wrong idea. Like a bad idea built on that's just trying so desperately to make itself work, but for some reason it just can't stick the landing. And I don't know if this is default of the individual directors or the writers, or if this is like a creative thing, like how Kevin Feige controls Marvel. I think this might be like a Amy Pascal thing, but genuinely speaking, I don't see this universe going too much further at this point. Like,
yeah,
be grateful that you have the MCU and Spider-Verse, and that because those are about all that we have right now.
Yeah,
and give Amazing Spider-Man 3 a chance. Sorry.
You said give Amazing Spider-Man 3 a chance, or give Spider-Man 3 a chance?
Give Amazing Spider-Man 3 a chance, because honest to God, Andrew Garfield deserves another chance after No Way Home.
I'm just gonna jump in and say the plot for Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 3 was supposed to be Norman Osborn's head in a jar and Peter having the ability to bring people back to life. So I don't really know if I would have been on board for that movie. I'm just saying.
Well, then
I'm not saying Andrew Garfield doesn't deserve a chance. I'm just saying that was the original plot that they were gonna go with, and that to me is where Sony fell off. That's another thing. To me, Sony fell off with Amazing Spider-Man 2. Amazing Spider-Man 2, I haven't seen, but I've seen so much of it that it does not look good. And I know everybody's gonna be like, but Andrew Garfield. Look, Andrew Garfield's great. He's fantastic as Spider-Man. He is as much Spider-Man as Tobey Maguire is Peter Parker. His movies were not that good. I'm just saying it. I'm just being honest. It had nothing to do with him. It had to do with the writing. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. I will say, too, when your universe starts off as Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters, SPUMC, and then you decide in 2021, 2 years after you make the announcement, to change it to Sony Spider-Man universe, that's when you know you have a problem.
And again,
And then
I
we're
like Andrew. I like the first Amazing Spider-Man film. Actually, that was I actually thought that one was really
Mhm.
good. So because I saw that in theaters with my dad. But again, I feel like if he had like a better creative team behind him, he would have been. There wouldn't have been a debate for who the best one was. But he was always great in my opinion. All the Spider people are great, save for the Madam Web ones. But yeah, it's it's just telling that again, even when Spider-Man isn't as good as other versions of him, we still want him more than all of these villains without him, you know?
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and the other thing too is that I'll just go ahead and say it as well. Sony's universe in general, it was always weird to me because they had so many movies slated. They had a Sinister Six movie, they had a Night Watch movie, they had a Jackpot movie. Not that Jackpot, another Jackpot. Um, for reference,
Right, we don't.
there's
They
a
know. They know. They know. We
in
don't need to
no, I
go
don't
into
think we
that
actually
anymore.
talked about it. In the Zep Wells run of Spider-Man, Mary Jane Watson becomes a hero named Jackpot. It's not great, but it's a different Jackpot. There were two untitled projects. One that might have been about Spider Woman. There's El Muerto. There's Hypno Hustler, and then there were other projects that were supposedly gonna do a Mysterio. They were gonna do an animated Spider Verse film starring Spider Man's Aunt May, and then we also have the canceled Silver and Black movie that was gonna be Silver Sable and Black Cat. And we also have the shows in the works, a Spider-Man Noir
Those
series.
those actually have a whole lot of potential because we have Noir, we have Silk, and we have potentially Spider Gwen. I don't know, but
Yeah,
I don't think that might be a thing. But those two actually have a lot of potential if they do them right. Because again, they have a lot with a show like this, you have a lot of opportunity to really explore things and go into why this Spider-Man or this Spider Person is so unique and interesting. I'm all for that. I would love for
yeah,
Silk to actually be the Spider Person of this villainous universe, you know, in an opportunity to help it stand out, you know.
yeah.
So
I'd
we'll see where
100%
where
love to
those
see
go.
that. I also like there was some backlash when Silver and Black was announced. Reading about it, I wouldn't have minded seeing it because it was described as a dark buddy film compared to Thelma and Louise and Midnight Run. It was supposed to be about them being tied together. It was going to have villains like Chameleon, Tarantula, and Tombstone, which honestly would have been cool, but it just kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. Um, so yeah, but in general, I guess because we really don't have much else to say, Sony needs to take a big step back and reevaluate what the hell they're doing because Morbius is an indicator. It was an early indicator. Venom to me was the first indicator. I'm not a big Venom guy of the movie, of Venom the character, that it was going downhill. And then Morbius was slamming the nail into the coffin, and Madam Web is probably going to drop an anvil in the coffin. So,
And then Craven's gonna have that coffin be attacked by an elephant 3 times,
no, he's going
just
to
like that. Way.
bury it, and it's not going to come back to life.
Yes, it is. Uh, Genuinely speaking, I think this universe is basically dead in the water. So I really am. I'm just gonna assume Vulture was pulled back by into the MCU by the Spider Society by Miguel and his crew, because that's the only thing that I can take away from that. Honest to God.
I just imagine Miguel shows up, pulls him away, and Morbius just goes, intriguing. And it's the same line that they don't change anything. It's like, come on. Like they pull him in, and then it cuts back to the same face. Intriguing. And that's the end of the movie. So,
Yeah, let's add that to the cut. How it should have ended.
yeah. It really should have been. Honestly, that would have made the movie so much better. But yeah, I think that's all we got to say. Again, big pile of nothing. Not a great movie.
Thumbs down.
Yeah, two big thumbs down. Big, big warning sign for where Sony's Spider-Man and Marvel properties are going. So thank you guys for joining us, and hopefully we'll have something better to talk about next time. Have a good night, guys.
Have a good night, everyone.
Goodbye. Or morning. I don't know when this is coming out, but Either way.
Goodbye so soon, and isn't it
Have a good lunch.
right?
Brunch.
Right.